Welcome everybody to Music from the Crypt's brand new segment. This is In the Studio. I'm your host, Brian.
And I'm your other, way more attractive, like 3 levels higher, more attractive host, the Badger.
Quite. Today we'll be examining in detail the various methods of vocal delivery employed by artists in the metal industry. And believe me, this is a topic that is far more nuanced than many people expect.
So much further that there's actually 2 main categories. Not 1, but 2.
And they all have various subcategories as well.
Of course, and we'll definitely go into detail about them.
Yeah, plenty of detail. So, Badger, what is your understanding of how metal vocals work?
Well, as far as I know, there are 2 categories of metal vocals, which I already stated. The first is harsh vocals, and that is a lot of the screaming, the yelling, the high-pitched screeches, and the low guttural stuff. All of that. And then the second is clean vocals, which is what most people think that singing is. Well, what most people would normally associate with singing.
Now, don't make the mistake of counting harsh vocals out of the whole categorization as singing, because clean vocals and harsh vocals do follow a lot of the same structures. They just have a different sound quality and a different manner of delivery. We'll be getting into that, but first, let's go ahead and define what exactly clean vocals and harsh vocals are.
Clean vocals comprise what people generally conceive as singing. These vocals are delivered in a manner that sounds crisp and, well, clean. And they have lyrics that are typically easier to understand.
Very well spoken, but what about harsh vocals?
Well, harsh vocals, on the other hand, is a term that encompasses everything else. We've got guttural growls, wails and groans, and high register shrieks. Harsh lyrics are typically less intelligible than clean lyrics, although some experienced metal listeners can negotiate them well.
As a curator of metal myself, I do consider myself to be one such individual.
You really can't go 5 minutes without talking yourself up, can you?
Well, you see, that's a massive exaggeration. I can go a full 11 consecutive minutes without talking myself up.
Wow, that really blows my mind.
The concept of harsh and clean vocals is very well established amongst those who are well acquainted with metal. However, there is quite a bit of variation within these 2 categories. For instance, there is a lot of variation between subgenres. Speed metal, symphonic metal, and power metal, for instance, have almost exclusively clean vocal deliveries with an operatic quality and are usually in a very high register. So they're almost like some of the male vocals even sound slightly feminine, they're so high. Particularly regarding power metal, which has often been described as a stratospheric vocal delivery because it's so exaggerated. Operatic qualities tend to be more associated with symphonic metal, but they do find their way into the other 2 genres I mentioned as well. To illustrate this concept, we brought the song Swords and Diamonds by Cryonic Temple.
But Brian, what about clean vocals and other subgenres?
Well, clean vocals in thrash metal and power metal are typically clean, although they are sung in a slightly lower register, maybe middle to high pitch, and are generally melodic and easy to pick out as well. Clean vocals are fairly common in goth metal. In fact, most goth metal songs will have at least some degree of clean vocals. However, they are usually interspersed with harsh vocals as well, and the way this is done is something called the Beauty and the Beast delivery. And what that involves is a single clean female vocalist who sings within a high pitch, typically mezzo-soprano, and that's contrasted with a harsh vocalist, typically male. It's the beast part of the scheme there, and that vocalist will usually grunt and growl in the manner that is fairly reminiscent of death metal, as a matter of fact. And just with doom metal, as a final example, clean vocals do appear occasionally, although they're more uncommon than in the other genres. When they are present, they're usually spoken rather than sung, and they're presented in a very low register, which coincides to some extent with the atmosphere of dread that the genre is generally attempting to produce. Now, to illustrate that concept, we have a song here. It's called The Poorest Waltz by My Dying Bride, one of the Peaceful Three, which is a band considered very iconic of the genre.
Across the cedar-covered river, within the night that covers them, up the hill toward the dark gate, and a road so sweet.
But Brian, more symphonic bands in the genre don't really seem to follow this trend.
Well, that's absolutely correct. However, I would like to point out that when a band integrates the styles of multiple subgenres of metal, it typically doesn't abide by the conventions of those genres. So, while what you said is correct, it does extend a little bit further.
Of course.
Now, we've just about covered clean vocals, but what about harsh vocals?
Well, I'll talk about two genres that use almost exclusively harsh vocals, those being black metal and death metal, and I'll start with death metal. This genre uses harsh vocals almost exclusively in a very low register. And they do this so often they've created their terms have come about to describe this, which are things such as death grunts and death growls, which just describe their very low sound that they create that's very,
Yes.
very harsh.
Mhm.
On the other hand, black metal is it kind of steers away from this low register
Mhm.
and moves up into a higher shriek almost, which is been developed by combining some of the themes from power metal singing into the more death metal type singing,
Right.
which creates this shrieking sound.
Mm-hmm. Just one thing that I'd like to point out. This style of vocal delivery that's been associated with black metal and screamo, that sort of thing, first emerged with the first wave of black metal, which was in the 1980s, primarily around the Nordic regions. Not the second wave of black metal that we currently have, the contemporary material, but the first wave. And what characterized the first wave was it had a very unpolished sort of quality, and that's because many of the artists were recording the songs and albums within their basements, and so their vocal delivery would resound off of the walls of the basement and have a very a very high reverb quality to them, and so that would somewhat contribute to the style that has been adopted. It's still present in black metal today, although it is polished up a little bit more. While growls, grunts, and screams are certainly an integral component of metal vocals, it would be completely unreasonable to say that they alone categorize the metal vocal delivery style.
I agree. While harsh vocals are often present, they're usually offset by the inclusion of instrumental melodies or by the addition or superimposition of clean vocals.
That's absolutely correct. In fact, a number of metal bands within various metal subgenres will employ multiple vocalists, usually one vocalist who is trained in delivering harsh vocals and one or more vocalists who deliver clean vocals. And what these bands will do is they'll have verses that are typically in harsh vocal delivery styles and choruses that are reserved for the clean vocalist, or as with the superimposition, include both the clean vocals and the harsh vocals simultaneously. More melodic bands will usually omit the harsh vocal component in the verses, but generally this is pretty standard.
Only more extreme artists strive for an entirely guttural sound quality. Right, Brian?
That's correct. In fact, those artists typically fall under the category of underground metal, which we described in considerable detail in our first broadcast, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, indeed we did.
You can actually access that first broadcast there in the link above. So, like I said before, it's fairly common for metal bands to incorporate multiple vocalists who utilize different vocal delivery methods. In fact, we have provided an example of such a thing. To be more specific, the manner of including a single vocalist, which is less common, who is capable of performing both harsh and clean vocals. And to illustrate this, we've brought the song Morphogenesis by Scar Symmetry.
Yes.
The
Just to summarize, metal vocals are far more diverse than the general public seems to conceive, and metal vocal delivery varies enormously between individual bands and between particular subgenres of metal.
So, Brian, if any of our viewers want more information about metal, do you know where they can go?
As a matter of fact, I have released a number of blog posts regarding that very subject. So, if you want additional information on the particular subgenres of metal regarding their genre conventions, instrumental components, lyrical themes, etc., you can check out my blog posts regarding those subjects.
Right. Well, this has been Music from the Crypt with your host, The Badger.
And your host, Brian.
Signing off.